Good afternoon, Mark Sudduth, HurricaneTrack.com with your Hurricane and Hurricane HD video blog for May 31st, 2012. Almost the start of the Atlantic hurricane season, so I thought we'd take a look at something that's going to be rather important this season, as it is in any season, and that is the Tropical Cyclone Heat Potential. What is that? Basically think about it as higher octane fuel for hurricanes. The warmer the water is deep below the surface, in other words, as long as it's not just at the skin of the ocean, but if that warm water, that 80-degree line, what we call the 80-degree isotherm, extends deep into the water to the ocean, then you have a lot more ocean heat content, and that provides extra fuel for hurricanes that may come along and churn up that water as it moves along. You can imagine the churning action, the wind, the waves, everything mixes up the water. So if you have higher ocean heat content, i.e. that warm water extending down into the ocean 200, 300, 400 meters, then the hurricane churns up more warm water. Whereas out over the areas where there's not much heat content, a hurricane would likely self-destruct, especially if it sits still. And that's mainly where that applies. So I thought we could take a look at ocean heat content for today, or at least close to today. This was a couple of days ago, from the NOAA Hurricane Research Division site. And you see most of the heat content is here in the Caribbean Sea, at about the middle part of our scale here. Basically, when you get towards the top, you're talking about very, very high ocean heat content, and thus additional fuel for tropical cyclones to take advantage of. But really, anything that you see in this shaded area is fairly warm and provides ample heat content for something to get going. This is just the high-grade stuff through here, what we call, again, that high-octane heat content. Zooming in and looking at the Gulf of Mexico in particular, you can see the loop current nosing its way up in here to the Gulf out of the Caribbean Sea, and that is very high heat content. If a hurricane were to traverse this and the upper-level winds were supportive, this area right here would probably provide some intensification. And you see other areas are starting to bloom as well, and we'll watch this as the season progresses. The entire Gulf will be very, very warm, as it always is, never in question as to whether or not the Gulf will be warm enough, that's for sure. But we're just now starting to see the heat content values go up, and this will be important once we start the hurricane season, because those hurricanes and tropical storms that traverse these heat content areas, especially as these values increase, you could see some powerful hurricanes. Not always. Warm water does not always make a hurricane, so there are other factors involved. Looking in the eastern Pacific, this area too starting to warm up nicely heat content wise, and we saw with Aletta and then Bud. Bud took advantage of some of this warmer heat content through here. This too will increase throughout the season, and we will be watching the eastern Pacific basin keenly to see if there's any impacts on Pacific Mexico. Looking at the Atlantic basin for today, the day before hurricane season, we see what's left over of Tropical Storm Beryl right there, and it's moving on out to sea. Will be of no consequence to land masses anymore. There's Bermuda. Even Bermuda would escape any ill effects from Beryl. We'll be watching this little area of disturbed weather here over the Caribbean through the Straits of Florida. None of the computer models indicate any development out of this anytime soon, so no worries there. We do have a tropical wave coming in here. Kind of looks like a shark fin, but it is an inverted trough. If you know meteorology, it's an inverted trough, an area of low pressure, a kink in the easterly trade winds, thus a tropical wave, or what they call an easterly wave. It'll probably move on across and into the Pacific with little fanfare. Maybe once it gets over here it could develop, we'll see. Speaking of over here and over there, now we do take a look at the eastern Pacific basin, and only the intertropical convergence zone here, where these trade winds from the northern hemisphere meet the trade winds coming in from the southern hemisphere. They bump into each other, upward motion ensues, and you've got convection. Some fog here along the coast of Mexico, and very cold water all out in here. This area not favorable for tropical development at all. But this region is, there's just nothing out there to take advantage of the conditions for the time being. So there you go. Here we are the day before hurricane season, and all looks calm and all looks quiet. These video blogs will be done every day of the week, and to keep you up to date on all things going on in the tropics. And I look forward to doing that with Hurricane and Hurricane HD throughout the 2012 hurricane season. As they say, the time is to prepare. The time to prepare is now. I thought I was going to get it out right. Very serious. The time to prepare is now, not when a hurricane is knocking on your door. So do what you can. I know it's a daunting task in some situations, but the more you can do to prepare ahead of time and at least have a hurricane plan, the easier it'll be on you, and you can reduce some of the stresses involved with preparing for a hurricane, especially a major one that can be life-changing. Alright, I am Mark Sudduth for HurricaneTrack.com, our website. Glad to produce these videos for Hurricane and Hurricane HD, and I'll see you tomorrow, the first day of the Atlantic hurricane season.